29, the A320 going to Phoenix, Arizona.
081 Heavy on Kilo, hold short Alpha.
Who's a Kilo Thai? Who is that?
081 Heavy.
Cam 8081 Heavy, left on Alpha, short of Echo. 808 Bravo Lima, you didn't follow it? 808 Bravo Lima?
808 Bravo Lima, you told us to follow the Embraer.
You follow the Embraer? JetBlue 1069?
Hello and welcome to MzeroA's video podcast, episode number 2, Preflighting. I'm your host, Jason Schappert. Today, I'll be showing you how I preflight my Cessna 150 before each and every flight. I'm sure you'll take away some techniques that will not only impress your instructor, but they'll make you a safer pilot. The best place to start your pre-flight is always in the cockpit. Locate the checklist. Keep in mind the checklist may vary from aircraft to aircraft. I usually like to start with checking the Hobbs time, not only on the sheet, but also in the aircraft. This really helps avoid being overcharged for anything. Next, we can turn the fuel selector valve to on or both, remove the control lock, and turn the master switch on. Once the master switch comes on, double check your fuel gauges to make sure they're up, and also we'll verify that they are correct. Next, let's check our lights. Turn on our nav lights, our beacon, and our strobe lights if you've got them. Also, be sure to check the pitot heat. Even in the summertime, I always want to make sure everything is working. You want to do a thorough walk around checking your beacon and your nav lights to make sure they're illuminated and make sure there's no cracks in the casing. When checking the pitot tube, just verify that it is warm to the touch. Next, we can go ahead and bring our flaps down. Be sure to extend the flaps all the way and verify the flap gauge as well is working. Once the flaps are all the way extended, verify that they're secure. Also, be sure to double check the flap connecting rod and make sure the tracks and rollers are free of any obstructions. Moving on to the aileron, verify your 4 rivets or screws attaching the aileron are still safe and free of corrosion. Verify your aileron connecting rod as well has a little bit of play. Double check your controls inside while moving the aileron to make sure they're moving as well. As we continue down the airplane, I like to verify that my tie-down hook is secure to avoid any vibration in flight. And now it's time to sump our fuel. As we sump our fuel, we're looking for aviation blue avgas, no water or impurities. I find a lot of students don't know what water looks like in fuel, so here I'll go ahead and show you. Notice how the water bubbles up at the bottom and separates almost like Italian dressing. This is an easy indication there's water in our fuel. Now, although that fuel won't make it back in the tank, it's still important to get up and visually check our fuel. I like to use a fuel stick to do this, to verify our fuel gauges are working properly. Also, be sure to put your fuel cap on nice and tight. Next, we move to our right main gear. There we can check tire pressures and verify our tires don't have any flat spots. Now, it's difficult having wheel pants on your airplane. You can look up underneath, or some students even roll the airplane to check every little bit of that tire. Next, we move on to the workhorse of our airplane, the power plant. Under the cowl, there are some crucial parts you, the pilot, need to pre-flight. Specifically, identify where the fuel strainer is. The fuel strainer will sump fuel that is already in the engine lines. This is a good indication if there's a prior contamination. Next, take a look at the magneto, specifically the P-leads. You want to look for any abrasions or tears to the P-lead. Next, check around the engine mount for any abrasions. As you can see here, the A&P has added silicone to the fresh air intake to avoid any abrasions due to the engine mount vibrating in flight. Now it's time to check the oil. Be sure you check the oil before each and every flight, no matter what. I usually like to bring over a rag with me just so I don't get oil all over the hangar floor. It's important to never hesitate to add a quart of oil or even a half of quart of oil, because a cool operating engine is going to be a happy engine. Next, it's time to finish up checking out the nose of our airplane. Verify your propeller is free of any nicks. A good rule of thumb is if your fingernail can get stuck in it, it might be something to address to your instructor or your mechanic. Also, if your airplane has an alternator belt, be sure to check that as well. Looking down at the nose wheel of our airplane, we want to verify there's at least 3 fingers of spacing showing on our nose strut. Verify our tire is full of pressure and also free of any bald spots. Now checking our left wing, verify your fresh air vent is clear, your fuel cap is on tight, one of the many advantages of being tall. Also check and make sure your pitot tube is clear, not only in the ram air hole, but also in the drain hole. And double check and make sure your stall warning horn is clear and tested working. Moving on to our aileron, verify all 3 counterweights are there. And continuing down on the left wing, the same thing, making sure our flap is secure, our pins are set, and our tracks are free of any obstructions. When checking our fuel on this side, we're going to do it just like we did on the other, making sure our fuel is nice, blue, and free of any obstructions. Sometimes holding it up to the sky makes it a lot easier to tell. Now this fuel, since we didn't do a test with it, can go back into the tank. Be sure to pour it through the filter just in case there's any dirt in there. Also on this side, we want to use our fuel stick to double check our fuel gauge on the left side as well as working properly. Make sure you put your fuel cap on nice and tight. Moving on to the empennage, verify our ELT antenna is there and secure. As we now check our elevator, we want to make sure the elevator is free of movement, and also always grab the elevator on the outside where the metal is thickest. Now the same goes for the rudder. Double check your rudder by grabbing it at the bottom, again where the metal is thickest, and check its connecting cables. Verify they're not rubbing on the empennage. Lastly, we check our elevator on the other side, again grabbing it where the metal is thickest and making sure our trim tab is secure. That is, assuming you have a fixed trim tab. I hope today's lesson has shed new light on some potential hazard areas that you may be missing while pre-flighting. Remember, a good pilot is always learning. See ya.
You're on Bravo, you're short of Victor Alpha, you're Beam the Iberian.
The Beam Alitalia on the left there.
Beam Alitalia. Alright, just hang on. JetBlue 179?
Yes, sir. We're number 2 holding short of Victor Alpha on Bravo.
Hey, who's the first JetBlue on Bravo short of Victor Alpha?
35.
You're an outbound?
Yep.
Hey, you guys should come up here one day. JetBlue 35, need you to pull it right up there and hold short of Victor for me.